was straightforward, but this one is the same problem I ran into last night at the Board of Public Works.
Well, the good news for you, Fred, is we got to item 4 and realized how important you were to the city.
Well, I thought
Everything
maybe you
was
were
already told.
on line 14.
Oh, God.
So after Amanda gives us the okay, we'll pick up on item 4.
You are good to go.
All right, we will resume the meeting. The time is 7:59. And we will go to item number 4, which is the 2020 Omni Center financials. Mr. Fred Bueller.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think Dan Wick, are you there?
He was.
Yes, I'm back, Fred.
Okay, we're on the Omni financials. Now, what I'd like to do is I hand it out to all the common council members and mayor, and Eric already had one. The forecasted financials through end of 12/31/2020. I think that's probably more important than where you stand today, which we can talk about. But so does everyone have in front of them the financials that were put in your box and emailed yesterday?
Yes.
You do?
Okay, so with that said, Dan, do you want to walk through that?
I can. So thank you, members of the finance and personnel. Fred, I prepared this document for City Administrator Eric Reinflesch and Finance Director Fred Bueller. It's basically the Omni Center financials, the forecast, very similar to what was done last month with our general fund accounts for the city. So basically we have, as the first paragraph states, the Omni Center was on pace for a very strong year. We were $10,000 in revenue over what we were the previous 3 years at any one time. And then we had this thing called COVID-19 hit. So what you can see, unfortunately, March 25th, we had to close the Omni Center down through the federal Governor Evers executive order. So what you see on attachment number 1, it's in the blue spreadsheet, is the amount of events that we have had that we lost this year. With this is the dates of the events, the anticipated revenue. This revenue information is from events that many of these events are reoccurring events or very similar events that we've had in years past. So we have the lost revenue, the lost concessions, catering, the number of room nights, as the Omni Center does work with room tax and get that. We have to justify the heads and beds. And then what we do have on here is a number of the events that have been rebooked that the staff have been working with to get that done. So if there's no questions on attachment 1, we'll move to attachment number 2. Attachment number 2, this is where we are basically starting July 1, moving through the end of the year, the items that we have booked in the system or anticipated revenue that we have moving forward. I will tell you, being that it's the 8th of July, we did open the doors today. So we did get some events back in there. There's some of these events have been canceled. We have heard 1, 2, about 4 of these events that you see on this sheet have called and canceled since Monday. Just because of COVID-19 and the uncertainty of things moving forward. With that, then the staff, we went through attachment number 3 is basically the same activity we did as we did with the general fund. Looked at each and every one of our accounts where we believe we will, from a revenue standpoint and an expense standpoint, feel that we'll end the year. If you look at page number 4 of 5 in that document, basically will show an anticipated loss of $184,415. Does take into consideration, then just down from that is what the anticipated revenue that we were set to bring in. Then the less in room tax, as room tax is down. So showing that based on the COVID-19, that we're seeing a loss of $216,000 there. So open it up for questions of what we have.
Well, we know that we're going to have losses and as a result of COVID. How do you have any indication of how other communities are faring, and how is Onalaska doing compared to other communities that are certainly having cancellations due to COVID?
I think every situation is different. Alderman Stevens. So us doing, many facilities have a multi-sheet ice arena. Not many of those facilities work as hard to try to book as many trade shows and multi-purpose events in there. So I think some of that is very hard to tell what's going on. The room tax, there was just in the local, the municipality that comes out, or the municipality magazine that came out, it had a little thing in there that I kept. It talked about the room taxes losses. They talked to 17 different communities, page 12 of it, if you have it there. And you can see the amount of room tax shortfall that goes through to those communities. So it is something that's affecting everybody. I will say the staff, with the support of our city administrator, city attorney, we have worked very hard to try to get the facility back open, which I'm happy to say we did today. We have a commodity that people want to utilize. Unfortunately, we've lost months of activity in there, and it's going to be very difficult to bring that back. But our hope is that we can get open, we can stay open, and do the best that we can on continuing to generate revenue going forward.
And that I see Eau Claire is 600,000 short, Madison's 10 million. So I mean, never happy to lose money, but it certainly could be worse. So I appreciate Tony working really hard to keep that filled and make a terrible situation not as bad as it could otherwise be.
And I think if you guys look back on attachment number 1, the amount of the activities that are rebooked for out in 2021 or sometimes 2 or 3 years out. So, that's to the staff, working hard and creating those relationships with those groups, for them to know that, they want to come back and be in our facility and move forward. So that's a big kudos to the staff that we have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's real good advice, Dan, that they want to come back because they're treated well. So it says a lot about you in our Omni Center. So thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on the Omni Center financials?
I just wanted to add one item is back here a few years back, I won't say how many because I could be off. The city of Onalaska had dollars, undesignated fund dollars within the room tax prior to the changes in the law as it relates to the stipulation in which the funds could be used for. And the city of Onalaska had 1.5 million that was moved out of the enterprise fund of tourism and moved into a special projects fund, which is our fund 204 of 1.5 million. And for those that Diane Wolf and Kim Smith is on the phone and Eric has been brought up to speed, is of that 1.5 million for the last, at least since Jim Benash has been here and gone. So I would say with Dan, probably the last 5 years, we've been utilizing any type of capital projects that the Omni Center has needed. Instead of going into the bond market, we've been utilizing some of the dollars within the special projects fund that we had allocated and set aside as designated funds. That balance and the dollars that were left in that restricted fund in the special projects fund on 12/31/2019 was $937,062. $19.62. I just wanted to point that out, that sometime down here, if wherever it may end up at the end of the tail year, to have this enterprise fund may obviously need to have to tap into a location. So it's important that I wanted to tell you that is the location that I had talked to the city administrator with, as well as Dan Wick. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
And that part of that fund could be used to counter out the shortfall.
Yep,
Given
and
that
so just
COVID.
for a little history is this is the money that originally was in the tourism fund. Also, what we have done in the past is a few years back is, for those that may remember, what they call the Badger Coulee lines.
Mhm.
It cost the city over $100 and some thousand to for a which Amanda is fully aware of putting a defense as to what direction those Badger Coulee lines were going to go. We had some of the dollars that the city has set aside into this same fund have been utilized for that source. And so these are dollars that have been put in a special project fund restricted for what the council feels necessary to apply it to them. For an example, which to me, it fits the criteria, because there was originally events being held at the Omni Center as it relates to bed nights and reimbursements. So to me, it's acceptable dollars that could be used to neutralize the deficit within the Omni Center.
All right, so we'll keep that in mind for October then, right? At
Or
budget time?
November.
November. Okay, I guess
Now we can
we'll,
go back to the Omni Center financial that was in your packet. That is through the month of June, which has as a 94,000 on page 2 of 2. You'll see there's a revenue of 174,919, 268,965 in expenses, showing a deficit of $94,046.07. The only offset would be the April room tax of 1,683.67. Okay, as you can see, April room tax, that's pretty sad, but
Yeah.
normally it's in that area of about 12 to 15,000. Again, it's 1% of the sales that is transferred to the Omni Center. So unless Dan has anything else to add, I have nothing more on the Omni Center.
I have nothing to more.
I move that we accept the 2020 Omni Center financials.
Second,
motion by Diane, seconded by Jim to accept the Omni Center financials. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the 2020 Omni Center financials, please say aye.
aye,
Aye. Financials for the Omni Center are accepted. On to item number 5, the 2020 General Fund financials. Mr. Fred Bueller.
Give me a second to relocate my books here. The one that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about tonight is, again, I'm going back to when we forecasted interest income. Back on the forecasted documents, you may recall that I had shown that the way it was going, the interest income would be short approximately $63,163. I also stated at that meeting that when the budget interest income or interest rate was calculated, we were currently getting a 1.71%. It went down 66 basis points down to 1.10. Well, since we've met since we've had that discussion in reference to interest income, the rate went from 1.10 and now it's down to 0.66, which is an additional 44 basis points. What that means, and what I did is I went back to see the last time it was down at the rate of 0.66. In 2017 is when we've seen very similar interest rate for the situation of interest rates. I can tell you that, and then the page that I'm on is page 2 of 16, where we say interest income, we had budgeted 250,000. In 2017, with the interest rate, and I took a look at what was happening for the entire duration of 2017, we received an interest income for the entire year, $81,000. As you can see on your financial, and we're currently sitting with a current rate of 0.66%, we're currently sitting at 86,832. I can tell you that I'm fairly, if this interest rate stays at the level it is, I can tell you that in 2021, we're going to be approximately $150,000 less budgeted for, instead of, it's going to be roughly 100,000 in interest income versus 250,000 in a 2021 budget. And I don't, I'm like to be optimistic, but I'm not seeing anything that's going to turn this interest investment around very quickly. Because I mean, it comes down real quickly, but it takes a long time to get back up there. So I want, and that's a fairly large item, and I wanted to point it out so nobody would be surprised of what's going on. In reference to the, again, comparing what we talked about on the forecasted budget to where we are today, I'm not aware of anything, Dan Wick, I don't think, I think what he anticipated for loss in the pool and recreation programs, I don't think there's anything that you're going to add back to receive any additional income.
Not where I'm at right now. I mean,
No.
if we would have been able to open up and continue to run programs like we started to, and then had to close up our services, we may have been able to increase things, but right now we just are going to hold tight with what we have.
And what you had budgeted for income has not, how should I, deviated one way or another for income.
Not from the income, nothing has changed from what we put together in the plans last month.
Okay, and I think it's important as we continue to move forward that we continue to discuss at great length where we stand in the 12/31 anticipated compared to the forecast that we did. And that's why I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss this interest income, because that is a large item within the general fund operating budget. If anyone have any questions on the revenue side. Okay. I have no anything that I wanted to bring your attention in reference to the expenditures. Nothing is unusual. I think the departments are watching very wisely of what's where we are today and monitoring their expenses very closely.
Brett, if I can just go back, just for transparency for people who are listening, the interest income GL, when we budgeted 250,000, that's cash monies that we have on hand that would earn interest that are used to pay for expenses and fees that we might get from the bank for doing services there. Is that correct, or is that?
Well, no, see, the 250,000 is what we anticipated interest income on our investments.
Can you give
So
me an example?
with our
like,
fund
a type of
balance and
investment?
with our general fund fund equity balance, that money that we have, because keep in mind, we don't get our shared revenue to the vast majority, as you may recall, is it's at the mid to end of August before we get the settlement of the taxes, because people have until, well, it used to be July 31st. Now it's been moved to October 1st. But we're going to get paid off here in August. And November 15th is when we get the shared revenue. So the dollars that we're talking about is we're utilizing our fund balance dollars that are invested, and hopefully have to touch them very sparingly. Any bills that we paid during the course of the year, vast majority of our bills, I mean, we got our operating budget bills that have to come out of our fund cash flow. But in reference to capital project dollars, we're using capital project fund investments to paying for any capital projects. Like, for example, for those that are on the Board of Public Works, you've seen some pretty hefty payments being issued. Those all come out of the capital project funds. So I hope I answered your question, Dan, but the 250,000 represent investment income from our current fund balance dollars. And like I say, we would have been okay
Any
when we,
idea of what the investment income vehicle would be? Is it like are they bonds? Are they just?
no, what we have is,
Or-
I can tell you $8 million of the fund balance that we have is what they call ICS, where the bank goes to many different banks to be under what I call under the FD or the FDC regulations and guaranteed and protected so that the city has no exposure in reference to, you may or may not recall when the auditors were here, as far as being protected through either collateralization from Bremer Bank, of which the dollars we have there, or it's being protected by the FDIC in reference to, and if you're familiar with an ICS, is the banks, the bank, for example, will use many different banks throughout the United States to maximize our interest on investments, protect the city's investment dollars so that we don't show any exposure of any uncollateralized funds. Does that answer what you're looking for, Dan?
Yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting. So we can talk more about that offline, but.
Okay. So that's all I have in reference to the general fund. I'll keep you posted. I think it's good that we spend some a fair amount of time each month to watch this very closely.
Especially this year.
I
What is
move,
the will of the committee with regards to item number 5?
I move to approve the 2020 general fund financials as presented in the packet this evening.
Second,
We have a motion by Diane, seconded by Jim to approve the general fund financials for 2020 as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of accepting the financials, please say aye.
I,
Aye. General fund financials are accepted. Turning the page, item number 6, resolution 30-2020 on Alaska is essential support of fair direct federal emergency support to reopen and rebuild local American economies. We have the resolution in here. I'm not sure who gets to talk about that.
Okay,
Up here,
what
maybe?
this refers to is now moving away from what we talked about at the shared ride level, we're moving into the Wisconsin side now. The dollars that the city has, and I'm just trying to put my hand, I don't know if it's 308,000, Eric, of potential dollars that the city could, but there's again
Yeah,
stipulations.
it's 308,000, Fred, yes,
308,000?
yes.
308,000 potential dollars through a grant that the city would potentially be eligible if it meets the criteria. And what Amanda has done here, I guess let's talk about that. I guess maybe Amanda will, it looks like to me, number 30 is more referring to something more general.
Yeah, it is. I can add something here, All Stevens, if I may.
Please do.
So the CARES Act and the 308,000 that we'll talk later on is specifically in response to expenses driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. So things, technology for remote working, cleaning supplies, the glass at the counters and what have you, that kind of response. What this resolution is trying to do, and it's going around in its exact capacity to lots of communities as sponsored by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities to go to the legislatures, is exactly what we referred to earlier. There's a loss of revenue in lots of communities that it's not necessarily an expense that we have to worry about, but we need to backfill revenue loss, which will also lead to perhaps job cuts within the organization, cuts in services that the community, that the governments provide their residents that aren't necessarily reimbursable because they're not directly related to an expense made in response to the COVID-19 reply. So this is asking the council support, which will be sent then to our U.S. legislators to try to recoup some of those losses so we can maintain those vital services that we provide that may be affected by the fact that there are revenue losses. So it's a statement of position statement. If we support the action of getting assistance from the federal government or not. That's what we're looking at.
And I found additional information you may recall as the governor announced back in June of 2020, 190 million available to local government in reference to COVID expenses. And then the city received that 308,000 or will not receive it unless, and it's not any type of match similar to the FTA, but the stipulations is the largest stipulation. It has to be non-budgeted items.
Okay, so we have a resolution. This is the will of the committee.
I move that we approve resolution 30-2020.
Second.
Motion by Diane, seconded by Jim to approve resolution 30-2020. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 6 is passed here. Item 7, resolution 31-2020 for the authorization of expense reimbursement submittal for routes to recovery grant.
Okay, this is pretty much what Eric kind of outlined just earlier. In order to be eligible for reimbursement, you may have seen this from time to time. This happens quite frequently. A resolution has to be passed by the city to follow the rules and regulations of reimbursements from state funding. And there's your numbers 1 through 7 of items that are looked at for criteria for reimbursement. And the period is not different than what we talked about earlier on the shared ride. This period is from March 1st of 2020 to December 30th of 2020. That is the window of expenditures. Now, Eric or anyone wishes to add?
Yep.
Feel free.
Alderman Stevens, if I may again. The key components are also in the resolutions here. We're identifying those 7 types of expenses, but because of the way that the reimbursement schedule is set up, there's 3 reimbursement windows throughout the year. They don't necessarily line up with the council meetings. So what we're asking for here too, under the last resolution clauses, is provided that finance director and administrator can determine that it matches one of those 7 expenses, and that there are new expenses that are reimbursable, which will not have a net impact on our bottom line budget, that we're able to submit those expenses on behalf of the city without necessarily coming back to the council every month, because we may miss then those cycles. So it is granting on a temporary basis authority to staff to manage those expenses so long as they meet those qualifications on your behalf.
Along with that said, the city of Onalaska since from March 1st, actually, for some reason, in my original list, I had from March 1st to 10/31 is when you qualify. So I think the reimbursement is different, but the city had, well, I say this was our list of items, but they'll be stricken from there, was a total of $50,078.20. But then from this list, we have to take out all the ones that were somewhat budgeted that wouldn't meet the criteria. And I assure you that before I do a reimbursement from the state, both the city administrator and I will be in concurrence as to that it meets the criteria and would be eligible and was non-budgeted. And like I said, I think the first draw is something like around the 16th of July is one of the first drawdowns. And like I say, and has to be already spent. So it is, so once we get through, we potentially may have a small reimbursement for the first one. But then throughout the coming months, then we'll be able to continue applying for reimbursement. And believe me, we have backing up with this Excel sheet I have is the invoices, the canceled checks, the purchase order, all those nice little things have been scanned and for audit purposes.
All right, so what is the will of the committee for item number 7?
I will make a motion to approve Resolution 31-2020.
We
Make
have
a
a motion
motion,
on the floor.
item number 7.
We have a motion by Diane, seconded by Jim to approve resolution 31-2020. Is there any other discussion? I have a couple items for discussion, and they will follow right along the same lines of what was discussed in utilities, but since this is a different funding source, can you talk about the relationship between when we make a purchase and when we get reimbursed? What's the relationship or the time frame?
I can tell you that here roughly a month to a month and a half ago, you may recall the city of Onalaska asked for a reimbursement of, I don't know if I'm Carrie, if she's on there, I think it was either 12,000 or 15,000 for reimbursement in reference to election material. It was less than 2 weeks. The funds were received in the city's local government investment, or I guess they sent us a check in this case, but in the future, I think they'll be putting it to one of our funds within the city of Onalaska as a wire. So, I mean, the turnaround, I would say it would be in that 2-week window.
Okay, so like both the feds and the state have been, sounds like they've been very quick on reimbursements for anything related to COVID. But my second question is there, it sounds like you and Eric will be pretty confident of anything submitted that will be reimbursed. In the event that it's not, and we've already made those expenses, how would we handle that? Or are we very confident that the fund?
Well, let me put it, I can assure you that I will have not only the two of us being a concurrence, there's going to be somebody from the state level. Or, I mean, I will be pretty confident that we will get, that they meet the criteria before we ask for reimbursement. And if for some unknown reason, which I'm hoping there isn't ever, then it would be, in other words, for an example, if the funds were, or a vast majority of these funding reimbursements, some of these are in general fund, a fair amount of these are going to be coming out of what, for example, the equipment replacement fund. But I can't foresee, I'm pretty confident, as you know, that I'm not going to ask for a reimbursement unless I am 99.99% for that it meets the criteria.
If I may add, we won't, to one more step, we won't want to authorize an expense unless we're confident it'll be reimbursable either too. The state is operating, obviously, the account. These are federal funds, and no amount of the $380,000 is worth Fred or I going to jail over. So we are absolutely not going to approve an expense without confidence that it would be reimbursed.
Okay, is there any other discussion on item 7? All right, hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor of approval of resolution 31-2020, please say aye.
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 Resolution 31-2020 passes. Item 8, the school police liaison officer agreement between the city of Onalaska and the school district for the 2020-2021 school year.
First of all, I guess I'm going to ask if Police Chief Chuck is on the phone, or Troy Miller.
I believe
Yes.
Ashbeck is in attendance, yes?
I am here.
Okay, I'm turning it over to you.
All right, thank you, Fred. Yeah, so I was contacted by the Onalaska School District recently, asking for me to submit the 2020 to 2021 SRO contract to council for approval. So naturally, we're starting with F&P here for you to review and do as you may. I will point out just a couple of changes that were made to the contract from previous years. On page 1 under section 2, reporting time, it was minor language where it pointed out like 178 days in the schools, and then like 16 hours on some other assignments or in-service days. The school asked, or had modified it just to make it cleaner, a straight 180 days. In my opinion, it really makes no substantial change to the contract. Essentially, it's the same to us as far as when the SRO will be working in the schools. So section 2 was a change, and pretty much that exact same language is on the very last page. Not the last page. You know, there's not page numbers. I guess it's the page right before Appendix 1, which has all the financials. So it talks about terms of employment. And there again had the language of the 180 days that was changed from 178 and 16 hours. So those are the two main changes. One other minor change that I asked for, if you go back one page, which is titled role description, and then it goes through title, qualifications, job goals, all of those items. I asked for number 10 that we put something in there, some language in regards to the SRO attending training with some of the staff on their in-service days, things that would be relevant for the SRO. I thought it was important that the SRO spends time with staff and learning some of their training or curriculum, and vice versa. Given the times right now with SROs in the schools, I thought any ability that we can for the SRO to work with the staff will only be a positive addition. So it doesn't really affect the contract in any way. I would say, financially, certainly not. And it's just something that I think we just felt that it was good to point out that, we're trying to be proactive and promoting that they work together, train together. So those really are the only changes. I know, Fred, I'm assuming you highlighted the section on overtime, so I don't know if there's something you want to talk about there, but I guess I would bring up the discussion last time was that we would monitor the amount of overtime that we were spending at events to see if we wanted to build the school in regards to that. And Assistant Chief Miller has been tracking that. I believe the latest number, of course, we stopped attending events back in early March because of COVID. But I think it was up to that point, like 59 hours of overtime, but that included 2 officers because we had switched SROs mid-year. And so Officer Tyler Blair, accepted the position. So he was in training for a while. And so he attended some of the sporting events as learning time. And so that overtime was higher. But honestly, it's my opinion that I would prefer at that amount of overtime that we do not build a school for that overtime. And the reason for that is because there are certainly days throughout the year, the school year, that the SRO, maybe takes vacation or has some mandatory in-house training, some of those effects, and the school is not turning around and asking for a refund of the 180 days that they are paying for. So I feel like we have a very good relationship and understanding that we're not going to nitpick them and they're not going to nitpick us, back and forth. And I think that's why we went through this exercise this year, was to see how much overtime are we really talking about. And I think it'll be, in a normal year, it'll be less than 59 hours because it would be a single officer. And I would rather keep the relationship as is with the school if the committee and the council so chooses. That's my recommendation.
Dan?
Yes, Alder Wolf.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Chief, is it your suggestion that we do not include number 3 overtime on the first page?
That's a great question. I don't know if this contract has gone in front of the school board already and has passed. I think that was their intention, to get it in front of the school board. I'm of the position that I don't really want to bill the school for that. So if that means it's cleaner to take it out of there, or if it's cleaner to leave it in there, because then it gives us kind of that, agreement kind of between the 180 days and the overtime. It's kind of that just mutual understanding.
I have to say that I appreciate your input about the not being nitpicking and trying to do, hour for hour and such. And it's nice that I think my understanding is the City of Onalaska and Onalaska School District has had a long-standing, excellent working arrangement, and certainly want to keep moving that forward. And I like your approach and attitude about, it's a win-win situation for both. And until we may feel in the future that maybe there's an imbalance, I like your attitude and approach with this. I guess I would ask our city administrator, Eric, what his thoughts were about number 3 overtime and his comfort level, whether we should leave it in or whether we should remove it. It's just kind of odd to have something in there if it's not going to be enforced again. And like we talked about at A&J.
The enforcement is really a relationship issue, and I agree, but we haven't charged the schools before. They're going to be surprised by it being charged. The problem I have is that those are actual and real costs of overtime that someone's paying, and right now it is the city is paying for those overtime costs. I would rather have them in, so we have an agreement in place that we do charge that. If we need to ease into those costs, I think that's fair, but I would definitely say we should keep that in. It's there already. We haven't charged it, but quite frankly, we should have charged it. Because those are hours that are being billed to the Onalaska taxpayers as overtime, but they're not actually getting overtime use of that officer because they're at security at the schools and what have you. So I know where Chief Ashbeck is coming from in terms of keeping it flexible and keeping that relationship built. Purely as a financial consideration or a legal consideration, I'd suggest keeping it in.
Okay.
Is there any reason why if it's in and the school district has agreed to it, that we could keep it in there? And in the event that like overtime is, a quarter of an hour or something like that, where it would probably take more man hours to bill that and receive it, where we could just opt to not charge that extra amount. But as Diane pointed out, if there's a kind of a gross imbalance, I think if they are agreeing to pay it and they're making use of that SRO extensively, and the funds have to come from somewhere, we should probably charge it. So I think I'm inclined to agree with the city administrator that we maybe ought not to strike it, and whether we choose to enforce it if it's agreed upon, we can make that decision later as the case arises.
As Chief Ashback said, they're not aware of this clause. I think they're not expecting all of a sudden a bill for overtime right now. And that's why I mentioned it's a relationship issue ultimately, but purely as a contractual or billing issue, it should be stay in there in my mind and be collected. And as you said, Alderman Stevens, how do we get there? I think that's to be determined.
And I think the key word is request. If the school district of Onalaska requests extra time, then they should probably be aware that there are costs that the city is going to have to incur. And then maybe that can factor into their decision-making process.
Yeah.
So.
If I could make a comment, I guess I would ask that, you know, we consider if we, well, I guess let me ask this. Are you stating that you think we should be billing for the overtime as it currently stands or not? I guess I'm confused at what you're.
Is that directed towards me? Chuck, I'm sorry, Chief.
I guess no, the committee.
Well, I can only speak for myself. If the city of Onalaska is responsible for paying the salary of the SRO, if this got to be a matter where we're talking tens of dollars, as a management perspective, I would probably just not charge it to the school district. But if it got to be $10,000 plus, that has to come from somewhere, and that has to be a budgeted item. So either we need to understand the impact of that extra time on the budget, if it's going to be significant, if there is a large imbalance that we need to address. If it's minor, I mean, I see your point where just the management of the program could be more onerous than settling up to make sure we get every penny. But if it's a lot of pennies, then, you know, we have to pay it. That's my perspective. I don't know what Jim or Diane think.
Well, and
I think
I'm
sorry, Nan.
I'm with the chief. I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing a police chief who is looking to continue and foster a good working relationship with the school district, but still is cognizant of the taxpayer dollars. And I hear our city administrator, who I think probably is top 5, is to be looking at bottom line is about protecting the taxpayer and tax dollars. So I see both sides of the issues, and that's why I'm a little bit torn on this, because I appreciate both of their approaches. But I think at the end of the day, I personally am going to have to lean more towards, if the services is being used, I think they need to pay for it. I might be able to be talked out of that, but but I think the chief is looking for direction, because I think he is hearing two different sides here, and I think he needs direction, whatever we as F&P choose to recommend, and then whatever council decides next Tuesday. But yeah, I'm a little bit.
Do you have an idea of how much overtime we might be looking at?
Yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to kind of clarify. You know, we're looking at, so far, like this last year, it was 59 hours of overtime, which, you know, is not just chump change. But the counter to that is, if an officer takes a week of vacation, you know, there's 40 plus hours that the school is now not receiving, but we are still billing them for. So in my opinion, honestly, I believe we are coming out ahead, because there's probably more than, I know 59 straight hours is not the same as 59 overtime hours, but my guess would be we are probably not in the school more than 59 hours a year, and the school is not, you know, balked at, you know, bill us less for those hours that your officer was on vacation or in training. So that's why I feel like we probably are coming out ahead on the deal, to be honest.
That's an interesting point. So maybe another solution would be to just budget some money to allow for some overtime, and then if they request an amount that becomes extravagant, then we would go into the billing process. That might be a compromise.
Yeah, and we can-
Although Stevens, the 59 hours, that time and a half is just under 89 hours then, account for the time and a half hours that way. I think the challenge is that there's really two boundaries. That, every school that they have lies within the city of Onalaska, but their boundaries of their district exceeds the boundaries of the city of Onalaska. And keep in mind that we actually have two school districts that support the city residents where their kids go to school, both Holman as well as Onalaska School District as well. The best spread of a dollar on the SRO is within the district boundaries, which exceeds our boundaries to a large degree, and applied to that body of taxpayers. Those are the ones that are receiving that service that otherwise is not being utilized for city policing services where taxpayers. Sorry, there goes my dogs. They're happy. So to me, it's the user of the service still should be the one that's paying for the service regardless of the number of hours. And I'm going to go on mute here so you can all hear yourselves what's on my dogs.
May I interject?
Please.
I think Amanda wants to talk.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
I'm
guess,
sorry, Amanda.
I guess the one thing that I would add is that when Chuck and I sat down, Chief Ashbeck and I, to review this contract, there's a lot of unknowns, I think, on both sides for the coming year. I mean, when we're talking about overtime for football games, dances, these are things that we don't actually know whether or not they will happen. There's also a lot of uncertainty just in general with how schools are approaching policing moving forward. And so I think our thought was to not stir the pot and make any major contract changes this year. And I still think that that is a good approach, at least for the 2021 school year. If we're going to look at, a major change in implementing how we build a school district, I guess I would advocate to do so with caution. We have a contract that's worked in the past. They're willing to move forward with it. And I think, to continue that good working relationship, maybe for this year, we continue with what we have agreed upon.
I would also add, if you're willing to do that, over this next school year, we could again continue to track the overtime and also track how many days the SRO is not in the school, so that we would maybe have a good calculation, a comparison for are we getting a better value or are they getting a better value? And then look at modifying the contract potentially next year.
All right. So what would we like to do with this? I'm thinking maybe this should be discussed further next week with the whole council. Maybe we move this on and put it on the non-consent.
I move that we refer the school/police liaison officer agreement between City of Onalaska and Onalaska School District for the 2020-21 school year to the full council next week without a recommendation.
Second.
All right. Motion by Diane, seconded by Jim to refer the school police liaison officer agreement between the City of Onalaska and the Onalaska School District for the 2020-2021 school year to be referred to the General Council without a recommendation. Diane, did you have a
Discussion. Thank Thank you. And the reason why I'm made the motion to refer without a recommendation is I think we'll have all 5 members on council and we'll also be meeting in person. And I think meeting in person, I think we'll be able to get, we'll see everyone, we'll be in chambers, and I think we will be able to cut to the chase a lot faster than through Zoom. I think Zoom is a little bit, it's impairing judgment sometime, and I would, in decision making, and I think we'll reach a faster decision next Tuesday night.
Yeah, and I think my understanding is, I believe everybody is very supportive of the SRO position and what it does for the school district and its value to the city. We're just working out some of the kinks here and trying to figure out what's the best approach for us to go. So having other people weigh in, I agree, is and having another week to kind of think about what we want to do is beneficial. So, all right, all those in favor of referring the item 8, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 8 is referred till next week. Which will bring us on to item number 9, the authorization to approve a non-budgeted city department expenditure in the equipment replacement fund to purchase 3 refurbished DS200 voting machines not to exceed $12,420, potential reimbursement through the CARES grant for COVID-related expenses. I know that we have several COVID reimbursements. Will this
I'll
maybe
make a
be a
motion to approve.
Joanne or a Carrie or a Fred thing?
This is Joanne. I can talk to this. We placed this item on the agenda for consideration due to the volume of absentee ballots that we are now processing due to concerns over in-person voting at the polls because of COVID. We're projecting 75% of our voters will be voting by absentee, compared to previously that number was around 25%. For the partisan primary on August 11th, we have already sent out 5.5 times the amount of absentee ballots that we did for the partisan primary in August of 2018. And we still have another month to go before the election. Absentee ballots take significantly more time to process, thereby necessitating the second machine at each of the 3 districts. This will allow us to have a dedicated machine for processing absentee ballots while leaving the other machine open for in-person voters. And this will enable us to keep the lines moving at the polling location and also avoids the need for our election workers to stay into the early hours of the morning processing those ballots. And we feel this meets the criteria of the requirements of the CARES Act and appreciate your consideration on this.
Thank you, Joanne.
I'll make a motion we approve.
I will second that in the amount not to exceed $12,420 as per the printed agenda.
Thanks, Diane.
Okay, item number 9, motion by Alder Olson, second by Alder Wolf to approve for the purchase of 3 refurbished DS200 voting machines not to exceed $12,420. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. That is approved. We will move on to item 10. Authorization to approve a non-budgeted city department expenditure in the equipment replacement fund to purchase 18 single station voting booths not to exceed $3,128.35 with potential reimbursement through the CARES grant for COVID related expenses. Joanne, I'm assuming this is along the same lines?
It is. Our current voting booths are side-by-side voting booths, which don't really fit the criteria right now. So we're looking to get single station voting booths that we can separate by 6 feet or more.
All right, what is the will of the committee?
I move that we approve the purchase of 18 single station voting booths not to exceed $3,128.35 for the printed agenda.
Second.
Motion by Alder Wolf, second by Alder Olson to approve the purchase of 18 single station voting booths not to exceed $3,128.35 through the CARES grant. All those in any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Motion passes. Item number 11, review and consideration of partially non-budgeted telephone system replacement at City Hall, Omni Center, and Public Works Facility with potential partial reimbursement through the CARES grant for COVID-related expenses.
I'll take this, Alderperson Stevens.
Okay, Chair recognizes Gerald Holter.
Thank you. In your packet tonight, I have included a memo regarding phone system replacement. Those of you that remember, the phone system at City Hall is original from the building in 2000. The phone system at the Public Works Facility is original from 2007. We have been looking at a new phone system for approximately 5 years and really getting serious about it for the last 2 years. I have included in your packet tonight an outline of a proposed phone system replacement cost sheet. As part of the approved 2020 budget, the city was looking at a hosted phone system. With that budget and what the IT department was going through at that time, we're trying to find a solution because of our IT infrastructure was not up to the point that we wanted to be, and we felt that the phone system really on our server would not be the best option. Now going through the phone system and the IT work that Nils Husker has done with our IT department in coordination with MCS Networks, we have gotten the server up to the point where I feel confident we can put the phone system on the server and run a phone system like we have today. With that, in our budget that we had an operating budget, hosted a yearly cost in our operating budget, and we had also budgeted for some phone hardware in the budget. The phone system that we have in your packet tonight was proposed by MCS Networks. We have went through this and looked at it from IT staff and with our consultant and feel this is a good solution for the city. It does offer us, as I outlined in the memo, some features that we would be able to use during this time of the COVID pandemic to help staff with working from home and working remotely. With that tonight, you can see the phone system equipment came to a price of $79,125.05, and the paging equipment was $4,500. We did, in your packet tonight, you did see there's an email. We did receive a second price for the equipment that was more than the original quote from a second vendor. We also have looked at the $13,500 for the installation and configuration from MCS Networks. Being that they're our IT consultant provider, I would like to have them install the system for us since they will be taking care of that system every year through a yearly contract with us. So if we would move forward with a new phone system hosted on our city server, that would be at a cost of $97,125.05. You can see that we've got some funding sources that I've outlined of $57,248 that we had in our 2020 budget. That leaves us a non-budgeted funding amount of $39,877.05. And in discussions with the city attorney and the city financial services director and city administrator, we feel that would be potentially COVID-19 reimbursable expense. And we feel very confident with that would be. So we're looking for a recommendation tonight to replace the city phone system. The MCS Networks has informed us that after they would get to go ahead, we could probably have it here within 60 days. So I would be hopeful that in the next 3 to 4 months, we would have a new phone system at the city. I guess with that, I do have Nils also on the line tonight. If you've got specific questions or questions for me, we'd be happy to try and answer them.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, Jared, if we didn't have this budgeted at all, if we weren't looking at replacing our phone systems, potentially would we have been able to get the whole thing covered?
We could have, it gets into the fact of what is a benefit through COVID and what is not. I think you'd have probably in talking to the city attorney and the financial services director, this is probably a good portion of it that is a fair assessment to the COVID part of it. If we were trying to get the whole thing, even if it wasn't budgeted, what benefit, we still have benefit to the city. So I think this is a good, just the way we had it budgeted and things, it's falling in line with a good split.
getting the system that we want and having 40% of it covered is good.
A win.
One item, Mr. Chair, if I could, Jared, could you kind of elaborate a little bit, is the other reason, or one of the components that we also feel in reference to COVID related, as this ties into the phones in which the department heads and their assistants have because of the remote functioning.
Hmm.
Yeah, in your memo tonight, I've outlined some bullet points of things that we feel that really, the features and abilities. I actually got them from MCS Networks. They gave them to me. But some of the things like, for instance, when if I'm working remotely, I can have my phone forwarded to my cell phone and it will look like you've called me at City Hall. So if someone calls me at City Hall, they'll directly be forwarded to my phone. Some of the multiple calling, so we can do party calls where I could have, for instance, Fred and Eric on the phone at the same time to discuss an issue. Those are all things that could be done also.
Jared, do you mind if I elaborate on that soft phone component a bit?
Sure, go ahead, Nils.
So it's actually even better than forwarding, which is what we have now. The soft phone component of this would actually just be your regular extension. So there wouldn't be any extra configuration required by either IT or end users. They would just, if they're working remote on their laptop, they could boot up the soft phone program, and that would basically just be the same as their extension at work. So it would be a much more seamless transition for remote work for that.
The other thing I wanted to add that I think is very, very important as it relates to moving forward is right now is, as you know, there's many times in which the general public want to reach the city, and most of the time if they dial the 608-781-9530, it's end to nowhere. But we're able to hold the messages, but the problem we run into is that if the way under our current system, the prior system prior to it, over time, it's been aged and not been able to modify, but we want to have it so the general public can call, get it to the people they need to have, and be confident that the person's going to call back. Because right now, the best we can do is if a call comes in, I send it up to the engineering department, for example, because a general customer wants to speak to a street related issue. And if Jared's not there, guess where it goes? It comes right back into the city of our clerk's office voicemail.
Hmm.
So it doesn't stay there, and Jared doesn't know it's even around. So we try to send it up there. So we try to send it up there when we know someone's there and get back to the customer. Otherwise it continues in this vicious cycle of back to us, back to us.
Chair.
Chair recognizes Alder Wolf.
Thank you, sir. So I just want to confirm, so the amount that we will be approving is the total project cost of the $97,125.05. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, considering that this item was on when I used to chair technology for a number of years, I would love to nothing more than to make the motion to accept to move to go ahead and accept the 2020 phone system replacement, total project cost in the amount of $97,125.05 per the handout in our packet. That's my motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would tend to second that if someone could supply me with the what value is on the word potential for reimbursement. What is the amount that you think, or does anybody know would be?
Yeah, the potential is 39,877.05. And
Okay.
believe me, before the city makes out a purchase order, the potential will be a heck of a lot stronger than just a potential.
Okay, thanks, Fred. I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Alder Wolf, seconded by Jim, rather. Is there any discussion? Alder Wolf.
Thank you, sir. So Fred, so if it you go to place the order and you're pretty darn sure turns into a, well, gosh, maybe not. Are you going to be coming back to F&P and saying, okay, we have a problem?
We'll be coming back. I guess the reason we put the word potential because I didn't want to wait another 30 days because if it is eligible for the phone system, we want to move expeditiously.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't want to delay it. And so that the easiest way not to delay it and is adding the word potential and then guaranteeing it's covered before the purchase order. And then if it's not covered, then it's probably going to come right back either through another year of budgeting the difference or using some funds within the equipment replacement fund to pick up the difference.
And this is an item that's long overdue, and one way or another, we need to find a way to fund it and get it done. So thank you, Fred.
No,
Thanks, Fred.
I understand Jim's apprehension, I guess. So this is a little different than from utilities and the other things that we talked about where you were 99.99% sure would be funded. So in the case that it's not, are we still purchasing the phones and then figuring out the rest later or through,
No,
future
it'll be coming
processes?
back to the F&P to decide whether or not they wish to use some undesignated fund balance within the equipment replacement fund and the allocation to, for example, water, sewer, accordingly, the enterprise funds. And that'll be coming back to you for the difference of that 39,000.
All right, so I want to make sure I understand succinctly. We would be buying the phones no matter what. If it's not approved, if the funds are not reimbursed for the 39,000, we're still buying the phones. It's coming back to F&P, so we're figuring out where we're drawing the other money from, or are we figuring out if we're going to execute the order to buy the phones?
No, if in fact it doesn't meet the criteria, it's put in a hold pattern until it comes to F&P next month.
Okay. I think I'm comfortable with that. Jim?
Yep, that's fine with me.
All right. Any
That's
other
fine.
discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of and where we were, the item number 11 for, I'll just read it. Item number 11 as stated per the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item number 11 passes. Brings us to item number 12, review and consideration of contractual services for information technology computer support. So I don't know if this is a Jared or a
That would
Nils.
be me. That would be me again, Mr. Chair, if I may.
You may.
In your pack tonight, I've included a memo that I've outlined with our departure of our IT computer sports specialist. I'm proposing to have MCS Networks go from the silver package that we have now to the gold package for computer support of our PCs through the city. That would be at a cost of $11,143.41. This would be a budget neutral item as we would not be rehiring the IT computer support specialist. But we need someone to backfill that work, being that that position is not here. We're requesting the upgrade for the rest of 2020.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alder Olson, seconded by Alder Wolf to approve the contractual services for information technology support group with MCS. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Item number 12 is approved. Last item on the finance section is item number 13, review and consideration of non-budgeted automatic flush valves and faucets at city-owned facilities with the potential reimbursement through the CARES grant for COVID-related expenses. I'm guessing this might be Dan Wick or Eric or Fred.
Sorry, I was talking and I was muted, so I'll take this item. As part of the CARES Act, looking at the COVID-19, this is an item we feel is very strong option to have for less touch points and things if we can come into our restroom facilities at City Hall, Public Works facility in the Omni Center and replace all of the faucets and toilet flush valves with automatic flushers and faucets that would turn on when they see it, so we don't have the people, the touch points and things from a sanitation process or a sanitizing process. So we did get 2 quotes, as you could see in the packet. The recommendation is to go with Ferguson at a cost of $33,952.46.
A
The
quick
question
question.
is this reimbursable? I would say yes, this is. That's why we're presenting it to you today.
Yeah, this would make sense. It's reimbursable. Diane, did you have a question?
Yeah, quick question for Dan. Is this the equipment only, or is this installed prices, or are our people installing these?
This would, the equipment only, our staff would be the ones installing it.
That is a project, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Dan.
Well, Diane, there's a joke in there, but I won't use it. It's getting late.
You haven't even started personnel yet.
Yeah, we haven't even started personnel yet. I will make the motion. I will make the motion to award the purchase to Ferguson in the total amount of $33,952.46 for the purchase of automatic flush valves and faucets.
Second.
Motion by Alder Wolf, seconded by Alder Olson. For item 13, we'll just say as per the agenda. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Do we have anybody representing Hope tonight as we go into personnel, or should we take another brief recess here? This is going on.
No, I can move through Hope's items.
Okay, do we want to trudge on and go forward? It's 9:15, or do you need to take a break?
I'm good for now.
All right, let's get her done. Item 14, review options from Human Resources on staff vacancies.
All right, attached in the packets that was presented to everyone done earlier, dated June 30th, is Hope's update on recruitment and open positions in the city of Onalaska. I'll let you peruse that at your convenience as to the openings that are there. Considering the time and the number of openings, it's probably best for you just to review on your own. But you can see that the activity in terms of positionings has been heavy.
Mhm.
If there's any questions or anything specific, I can review that for you.
Okay.
My only question would be on the last item on the list, the computer support specialist. That was deemed budget neutral. I thought I'd heard initially there'd be a small cost savings over the current fiscal year. Is that changed, or was it just not significant to mention?
No, for the partial year, there'll be a small savings, yes. And that comment about until the budgets can be reviewed, Hope's referencing 2021 for a full year, if you compare the gold package versus the computer support specialist position. So more of that will be determined as we move forward.
And is our intention for 2021 for this position where we will outsource it to MCS going forward, or is there benefit to having to filling the position with a call it a captive and employee, or is that something that we're just going to determine in the post-budget period?
We have the opportunity to really test out the gold package versus the silver package during this year. And based on that results, we can make a recommendation as part of the budget process if we want to outsource it or continue to have a position on the roster.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Alder Wolf?
Thank you. I do have a quick question regarding the office clerical support finance. with Stacy Wilkes' position being opened now. Another opening for office clerical support finance. I see this position has been held until budgets can be reviewed. So we're not so that's just going to be held in limbo for right now, or what, Eric, can you give me some update on that?
The conversation later on in this meeting regarding filling positions will kind of dictate that in terms of the budgets being reviewed.
Okay. Okay.
So potentially we could be filling that position depending on what council action is on those filling of the other positions.
And you're referring to which later in the agenda?
Conversation about filling positions. Wait, we're doing that right now. I can only look at one screen at a time here, so.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, yeah, so we rephrase number 14, review options for human resources and staff vacancies. It's usually just the report. So
Okay.
as under this item, the conversation about the plan to fill the public safety positions is appropriate. And that'll determine if we fill this position or not.
Oh, okay.
So the report will be done. We'll move on to 15. We should have that conversation.
Okay.
Well, shall we move on to item 15? Michelle.
Sure.
Yep.
Item 15, review and consideration of,
If I may, before we go on to 15, which is the report, if there, a month ago, we had a conversation that, and the direction of the council was to develop a plan to bring in the originally budgeted 3 police officers and 3 firefighters new. We also had a conversation at that point in time that the impact on the budget, the general fund budget, was basically a break-even point, which we wanted to reiterate, well, it's break-even if we don't bring those positions on that we are budgeting for. So the reason those positions are vacant, so the paralegal position is vacant, that office clerical support position is vacant, and to some degree, the IT computer support specialist, we've already dealt with that one. I held those vacant in the chance that the council would like to advance some of those positions as requested. And why would I fill a budget when that's really a decision the council needs to make? So if the council would like to fill or have a plan during 2020 to fill any of those 6 new positions that we originally budgeted for, this is the time to have that conversation about filling that. And that'll determine, do we fill the other positions or not at this point in time. So before we move on to 15, that's the insight that I would be seeking from this committee.
all right. Well, I have some thoughts, but Jim and Diana, if you,
Go ahead.
all right, the, to Eric's point, I think the general consensus of the council, if I understood what everybody said correctly, was there was a commitment to at least starting the process of filling these positions. Although the asterisk was on there that we had to be able to make sure that we could afford them. My takeaway is that we at least want to kind of lay out the timeline and start the process of seeing what it would look like and what the impact of the budget is to perhaps start somebody on police and/or fire late this year, one of those extra 3 budgeted positions, and then the other 2 would be filled at some point in 2021. I know that there is a lag, or when council gives its approval to when that person actually starts working for us, can take months. So what my hope was that we would be able to get a nod from council to at least start the commitment to filling one of these positions at later this year, after the budget period starts and we know where we're standing, and then lay the framework for when we would expect to hire the additional remaining public safety positions. So I would like to see the process at least started. We don't want to paint ourselves into a corner that where we're putting other positions at risk. But this is something that we budgeted for, and I think most of it, the can is going to be kicked into 2021. But we need to start the process at some point to getting to that goal of filling those positions by the end of next year. I'd like to see all 3 filled and have that start sometime at the end of this year. That's my hope. So Jim or Diane, do you?
Well, I just wanted to remind everyone that we have a wage study that we're doing, and that we promised that we would do something for staff on that, so that has to be in consideration with some of these positions that you're funding, because you know, it's you got to put the priorities where they should be, and the promises that we made to staff, and keep that in mind. I believe that's what we should, these are the things we're going to have to decide. So you make some good points, Dan, and Diane, I'd love to hear your input too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. I agree with both of you gentlemen this evening. I think the most important thing personally is that we need a timeline. I think we need to set up a timeline. What is it going to look like? We need to all get on the same page. I think it's important for staff to see what the timeline is, and we need to work towards that expectation. I think we're all disappointed that, you know, we're not farther ahead in the process, but no one ever predicted COVID was going to come along and rain on our parade. So I liked what came out of our budget meeting last month or so, where I felt we were all on the same page and that we had made a commitment, and we need to try to honor that commitment as soon as possible and as feasibly possible. So so for me, I'm looking for a timeline. What is feasibly possible and financially possible? So I'll be looking to city administrator for input and for some type of a timeline, because Alderperson Stevens is correct that, you know, council can say today, okay, we're going to approve this, but how many months is it going to take? So the sooner we have a timeline, the more we can lay that out and start working towards that goal. Thank you.
So Eric, based on what you heard, would you be able to produce a timeline that would be able to work within the confines of the budget, or what factors would those have on some of these other positions? And as Jim mentioned, the wage study. I think it would help us to figure out when to pull the trigger if we knew what the full picture looked like, and what the implications of, you know, if we hired a police officer or a firefighter in December, what does that mean for you know, the assistant paralegal position, or can we do both, or what? Basically, paint us a picture, and then we can make some decisions.
Mayor Smith actually had a proposal. She's on, I believe, if she would like to perhaps weigh in if you'd like her to. But she had a proposal that she had discussed with Fred, and it's one that I would be confident in, at least in 2020, that we could do. But for those that have the idea, I'd like perhaps for them to speak on that idea.
It's always nice to hear from our mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, I sat down with several different people, and that's why it was by my request that item 17 was placed on the agenda, review and consideration of filling the budget police officer position effective on October 1st of 2020 or later. And the reason that is my recommendation is because we, looking at all the vacancies, which we have summarized nicely for us, thanks to Hope, we do have a lot of vacancies, which gives us a lot of choices, and we obviously know that we're not going to be able to fill them all. The police office or the firefighters are still working on filling 2 of their vacancies. So just by their normal process, it's going to be difficult for them to get in a position where they're even ready to hire additional staff by the end of the year. So I think it's really important that regardless of how the other pieces come to fit together, that we start moving on filling this police officer position. Because it will take it from now, if you decide this meeting cycle, it will be October before we can get to the place where we're ready to potentially fill the position. If we wait another month, then it will be November, you know, et cetera. So really time is of the essence because this is such a lengthy process. And that is without even the unknown if another police officer vacancy were to happen. Then we would have that position in addition that we would have to fill. And obviously, I hope that all of our city employees stay here and nobody leaves, but the reality is that could very well happen. So I would like to see us give staff the go-ahead to start working on getting that police officer filled with the start date, not to be until after October 1st. And then as these budget numbers become more clear, we can start to fill in the other positions as Eric has prioritized them. But that's my recommendation.
If I'm confident, based on that, and Fred, please confirm that based on the hiring timeline for police officer and with the date of October 1st beyond, we would then be able to then continue to fill, which is the question at hand right now, fill the positions, continue to fill the positions that are currently vacant.
I'm quite confident that because we turned the budget over at the common council meeting in October, which would be turned over to the council on October 13th. So I'm very comfortable that we would definitely know somewhere in that early part of October as to where we stand for 2021.
And then we'd, if I'm following correctly, then we'd have a more sound basis to lay out the timeline going into 2021 for when the other public safety positions could be filled. Is that correct?
That's
Correct. For the public safety.
Okay.
That's correct.
I think it's reasonable and it's sound.
Yep.
Alder Wolf.
Thank you, sir. So I guess one question, I heard what Mayor Kim said about with the fire department and that, you know, we're down to right now and our goal is to fill those. When I read the handout about the fire department openings, we're down to the completed interviews and they've made selections for the candidates. So they made conditional offers to the top 2 applicants. The remaining 7 have been placed on an eligibility list. So my first question would be, why not a firefighter? I mean, if there's 7 more on the eligibility list, does it have to do with training? Because you're going to be bringing 2 new people on, and I understand with the training and so I guess that'd be my question. Why a police and not a fire?
Would anybody like to field that? Or, I mean, it could be as simple as we have to pick one, but it's a good question. I'm not disagreeing.
If not to pick, you know, sides between 2 very vital departments,
Right.
One police officer could be targeted to shift with most calls, for example. One firefighter, they'll be due to their 24-hour rotation. You're not necessarily targeting the day, you don't know the day or the shift that's going to have the most calls. The value, I think, in firefighters really lies in being able to fill, you know, 1 firefighter per shift for a total of 3. That helps reduce, I think, the most effective way. It's just, if anything else, if we're only 1, I would say due to the type of shifts, maybe most effective in the police department.
Okay, and I was just looking for some justification to figure out one, because I certainly will never want to pit department versus department. So please, I don't want anyone to misinterpret. I'm just looking at the whole scope of things and trying to make justification, like where does one start? So.
If I can build off of that, so when it comes time, sometime in 2021 to start filling the other positions, don't we have that same problem where the police positions, they can kind of swap times a little bit more evenly? Are we looking at hiring all 3 firefighters at the same time to avoid that? Or are we going to do a police and then a fire and then a police and then a fire? Because if you don't hire all 3 firefighters at the same time, we're going to have that same problem.
I wouldn't say necessarily have to hire them at the same time. I said you have to have a plan to hire them, at least. I think that makes the most sense. So they know when the firefighters are coming on board, which I don't think we can do if we're only looking at one position for 2020.
Can we hear from Troy?
I was going to say, it looked like our new chief, Troy Goody, wanted to weigh in.
Thank you. Just let me clarify a few things that I understand. Diane, you were talking about the position. We do have, I believe we have the offer going out, or the getting information from one of our candidates on when they can actually start. So I think we're moving forward on that, where that individual will be given a 2-week notice to fill one of the vacancies. I believe we're sending an offer out as one candidate did not pass the physical agility. So there should be an offer going out to I guess our number 3 on the list to fill that second vacancy. So just so we're clear that we're talking about, we are still filling our vacancies. And then as far as the new position, it would be great to have maybe one start in the end of 2020, if that's possible. We don't have to bring all 3 on at the same time, but I believe the police department brings one on at a time, and they have a very extensive training that they have to do, but Chief Ashbeck could talk about that. We could look at bringing in the other 2 sometime early 2021, if that's an option. But just for clarification, we do have, or should have, hopefully have one of the vacancies filled in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Great.
And then hopefully the other one will get going through the process and we'll fill that second vacancy. Are there any questions on
Those
that?
vacancies we're talking about, to be clear, those are existing positions. They're not one of the
Yes.
3 new ones.
That is not the new positions that we're talking about. I just wanted to clarify that so things aren't getting confused on your guys' end.
Yeah, thank you, Troy.
Yeah.
Exciting issues that we get to deal with here. So,
Hmm.
all right. Any further discussion?
If I could just intervene just a little bit, Mr. Chair.
Sure,
Again, I'm going to go
Fred
back
Mueller.
to the presentation I did to kind of get an idea of what it costs to for a police officer or a firefighter. And the exhibits that we talked about, non-budgeted items. I went into very good detail to tell you that there's approximately $116,000 of additional overtime, or not overtime, additional hours because of the rotation from 1947.59 to 2069 hours. So that additional 116,000, and an officer, a police officer, is roughly, with benefits, is $60,888. So, and I know Chief Chuck Ashbeck is fully aware of the fact that if it's 116,000 non-budgeted additional hours of his existing staff, he's already knows that he's not going to be able to get all 3 officers because it takes $60,888 of the 116,000. So he's already lost one of them because there is no money put in the 2021 budget to offset for that. And I just want to make sure everybody clearly understands that. And the other hurdle that we continue to face, which will be monitored throughout this entire process, that all 6 of these positions, when the council put this in the budget, were effective for 1. So you have to keep in mind as we moving forward on these positions, it's the fact that we got to be very cautious, but we also got that first or the 1 quarter or 3 months worth of non-budgeted that we got to make sure that we can fit within the 2021 budget.
I think we're doing a cautious approach by dipping our toes into this and waiting until we know what the budget is and then spacing out the hirings over 2021, or is there something different that you're?
No, I totally agree. And I just wanted to point it out so that we be very cognizant of that. And I think we have.
Yeah, okay. I agree. That's fair.
I recognize Diane Wolf.
Thank you, Your Honor. So,
When did I become a Your Honor?
well, you're chairing the meeting, so Chair, thank you, Chair. So, not sure who this
Tell me you
question
got
is
tired, Diane.
for, but I'm not correct me if I'm wrong, but when we did the contract buyout for police, didn't we gain however many more hours?
You gained hours, but there was non-budgeted when
Right.
when the entire fleet took the moving forward, is that additional 121.41 hours per police officer is not something that through the budget process last year that we anticipated was going to happen.
Right, and I guess my point is that, police, I'm just looking at right now, I'm just leaning towards filling a fire position at this point in time. That's kind of where I'm at. So.
At this point now, or at this point?
No, I mean,
Here.
when we're looking at a timeline, I mean, I'm just thinking about, police says, we've gotten those additional hours. And I'm, we've looked at the overtime that fire is accumulating and the burnout. When I visited all 3 shifts last year, that was very telling to me. And it was a very difficult decision for me to go ahead budget wise and to do 3 and 3 in each department, because looking at the budget, but I also knew that, it was time we needed to move forward. And that was a tough decision for me. But what pushed me to say yes for 3 fire was the burnout, was doing those in-person visits with all those 3 shifts. And I'm going to have to support filling a fire position.
All right, so I think we're jumping ahead on the agenda.
Well, I'm just weighing in just this conversation.
No, I understand. I think right now we're on, are we still on item 15?
We are. I mean,
kind
the
of
question is,
jumped
if we're looking at
into
one
so-
person position, I
Right.
can then go ahead and say, yes, we'll fill the rest of the vacancies on hold. I think that, to your point, Alderman Stevens, the discussion of which one position that is and the timeline can be deferred till item 617.
If I could, Mr. Chair, is keep in mind, as in the packet of material that we talked about here last month, there's only $5,000 differential between a starting police officer and a starting firefighter. So you can make that decision at a later date.
All right, so I'm going to recommend when we get to that maybe that's something that we, again, let the whole council weigh in, because this is, it's a big deal. And so, all right, so how about we wrap up item 15, we go on to 16, and then we can decide what we want to do with item 17 as what the mayor's plan
Can we
was.
go back to 15 real quick?
I don't think we've ever technically
No.
left it, but
Considering that Hope isn't here this evening, and you see the work that has gone into this, I think it would be the most respectful thing to do, if others agree, that she present this next month at FNP.
I think that's an excellent idea. Is that a motion?
It's her document, it's her department. I think that'd be the most respectful thing to do for her to go ahead and represent this.
You will have a updated one too next month.
Okay,
All right, do we need a motion to refer that, or do we just?
No,
I-
no,
Let her
it would
have-
just be part of
Okay.
her next month's presentation.
okay.
All right, so
This as well.
item 15, then we will punt until next month, which will bring us to item 16. Review and consideration of the 2020 to 2022 International Association of Firefighters Local 127 Contract and Memorandum of Understanding. Thinking Eric is probably going to be our guy. Or not?
Oh, sorry. Thought I was on mute, so I was trying to unmute myself, but I was already unmuted. So Amanda will have to confirm. Our understanding is that the contract proposal has been approved, but we do not have a signed copy. So our hope would be that we would have a signed copy that the council can vote on at council meeting next week. It's a long document. I'm pleased to have gotten to this point in time. It has taken us a while to get there, but I think it's a good one for both the employees and for the employer. Yeah, I can certainly answer any questions that you may have. You've had it for several days. The key thing that I think that impacts us and that one of the goals that we had established for ourselves is make sure that we become and maintain competitiveness. And so I'll refer to what's page 105 of 106 in the packet, which is the second to last page of the document, Appendix 3, Wages and Longevity. And the format is a bit different than it has been in the past on this page. It does tie in longevity on the same page. You can see the impact of that, to be clear. Now, the biggest change, though, is you see it's after 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. Those were double in time prior to 4 and 6 years. So we have shortened up the time it takes to move step to step. And then we've added after 4 years, so an additional step beyond what was offered in the past. And then, of course, then we have lieutenant on top of that. A key qualifier for the after 4 years is you must be a fire officer 1 or fire inspector 1 to qualify for that step. We're also trying to incentivize additional education and experience and reward those that are willing to do that as well. Our longevity kicks in, you can see, depending on the number of years. Again, to recognize with the maximum without certification is what you get after 3 years. And then the maximum you get with certification, you can go up to 4 years. And then as you move to the right, you can see the impact of the 1, 3, 5, and then 6% longevity on top of that pay. So the hope here is now that employees that we value feel valued through increased compensation. Also to note, this is a 3-year agreement with 2.1% across the board increases each year. The contract will begin January 1st, once it is approved and signed by both parties. Speaking of budgets, there will be budgetary impact to that because we will then, once it's approved, need to go back and compensate at the higher wages for hours worked in 2020.
All right, I know a lot of work has gone into this one, and we've been working on it for a long time.
Yes, Dan, you have. Thanks for being a part of the team. I appreciate that.
All right, so do we need a motion, or we just, I think we.
At this point, I would say just refer to council and the expectation that we get a signed copy that the council, full council can take action on it. Motion
to refer the 2020 to 2022 International Association of Firefighters Local 127 contract and memorandum of understanding to next week's common council meeting.
Motion by Diane. Do I hear a second? I think Jim's muted. So Jim, you're muted, but I will second this so we can keep it moving. All those in favor of, I think that we were referring this to the Common Council item number 16 on the printed agenda. All those in favor of, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, here's Jim. All right, item 17, so review and consideration of filling the budgeted police officer position effective October 1st, 2020 or later. The mayor has weighed in on this. I know that we've given it some discussion. I would actually make a motion that we change the words, so it would be review and consideration of filling a budgeted public safety position effective October 1st, 2020 or later, with the idea that this also will go to the full council.
I will second that.
Could I make a comment under discussion?
The chair recognizes Her Honor the Mayor.
Thank you. I think part of the direction that Eric is looking for, though, is those other, back to item 14, those other staff vacancies exist. And Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but the implication of once the council commits to this is then you're going to decide to go ahead and fill those other positions?
If
is
what
that
I'm
correct,
hearing
Eric?
here is yes, short answer is yes. What I'm hearing here is a position. And as Fred pointed out, the difference is about 5,000 between either one. So I'd still be comfortable if there is a position hired as per your plan, October 1st or beyond. Then I would go ahead and begin filling the other vacant positions.
Right. And I just want to go on to say that I do think that there is a urgent, sorry, I just want my dogs to be chiming in too. I do think there is an urgency for filling the fire positions as well. I just think that they're further out before they can, they currently have an assistant chief vacancy. They need to fill that person. It potentially could be someone from within. They have 2 other current vacancies that they're in the process of filling. So that's 2 to 3 new positions that they're going to be bringing online. And no matter the experience of the candidate, you know, it will take them a while to acclimate to the new group of firefighters that they're working with, or if they're new recruits, they'll have a lot of training to undergo. So that's why I was thinking ahead that by the time those newer people are seasoned, would be better to bring in hopefully 2 or 3 more new firefighters. I know that the way they do their training, they can accommodate more, whereas the police department is a little better if they just have one or maybe 2 new ones at a time. So that's kind of just a little more about what I was thinking, but I just really want everyone to understand that we have an unprecedented amount of vacant positions right now. So it would be something to think about if all those should be filled as stated.
And thank you, Mayor, for a little bit more background on that. I do appreciate that, and I will certainly take that into consideration. Thank you.
Eric, so correct me if I'm wrong, if the council gives if the council green lights one public safety position, be it police or fire, to start after October 1st, we feel good that we can start filling the other open regular city positions, not the public safety positions, but some of the other vacancies, and everybody's paycheck clears and everything's good. I mean, we feel good about that, or are we still in a either or category?
No, if there's one position, then I feel good about that. If the council says 2 or more, then those positions or other positions would need to be looked at in 2020.
All right.
So quick question, Chair.
Yes, Diane.
So, and I just want to confirm that will be up for kind of a final discussion at council next Tuesday then, Eric?
Yes.
Okay. And then what will that be under? Will that be like under, will it be discussed under like number 17?
Yeah, we can put on item on the agenda like number 17 as per Alder Stevens' recommendations to change that to, public safety position that is open for full council debate which position, the number of positions. I don't think we have to go back and do 14. There's nothing official about the position being held open, that I held open. So once the decision is made and I know it fits within the budgetary document, I will continue to fill those positions.
I just didn't know if item number 17 needed to be rephrased a little bit more that would also include other positions. But right now, it just talks about the public safety. Because I think we may just want to have an open discussion still about some open positions, about the validity of filling them and such. Just so we're all on the same page. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with that.
Sure, but if we're only filling one position, then the other positions, as I understand it, staff could start to fill the, like
That's what I want to talk about. That's
Right.
what I'd like to talk about as a full council.
Okay. So you're requesting that the other positions then, do we want to amend this to include the impact on other positions? On item 17, or do we want to also have 14 pulled and go to non-consent?
Whatever is the cleanest way to go ahead and be able to talk about the status of other positions and the filling or non-filling of them.
If I could intervene, Mr. Chair, I think number 14 could be slid over to the non-consent, and you could cover exactly what you're saying.
All right, will that work for you, Diane?
Sure, like discussion of possible action on options from, on staff vacancies, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So someone later doesn't say, why do we fill that position? Is there still a need for that position? So that's all.
All right, so any other discussion on actually, was that an amendment? Do we vote on the amendment, or are we good with the language? Amending it to public office, safety officer, as opposed to police officer.
To my knowledge, Mr. Chair, you made that as part of your motion.
All right, so we have a motion. Is there any other discussion? All right, so we are voting on review and consideration of filling the budgeted public safety position effective October 1st, 2020 or later. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Jim, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry.
And that passed unanimously. So now we get to go into closed session to consider a motion to convene in closed session under section 19.85, parent 1, parent G of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. Specifically, slip and fall on sidewalk on the 500 block of 2nd Avenue South, Onalaska, Wisconsin. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, the committee will reconvene in open session to take necessary action and/or continue on with the printed agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to go in closed session?
Second.
Motion to go into closed session by Alder Wolf, seconded by Alder Olson. Roll call.
Diane, aye.
Jim, aye.
Stevens, aye. We are in closed session.
Okay, just give me one moment. We've got to let people get off the phone lines and then also to stop the YouTube and recording.